Welcome back, everybody. We're diving deep this time into war, the third book in Jennifer Ann Davis's The True Rain series. This time we find Rima in quite a predicament, kidnapped and taken to the heart of Empyrean.
And it's not just a simple kidnapping story. Davis
Mhm.
really creates this intricate plot, weaving in political tension, rebellion, and a war that's been brewing for generations between Greenwood Island and this really formidable empire,
Hmm.
Empyrean.
Yeah, right from the start, we're just thrown into this high stakes world, and we see how Rima's story is so closely tied to the fate of these two nations. We've got Dharmic, her lover, desperately trying to find her, and then we have Nathanek, the assassin who takes her captive. But their relationship is complicated.
Absolutely. And the contrast that Davis portrays between Greenwood Island and Empyrean is amazing, both physically and culturally. Emperor's City, it's all about structure. It's all about military dominance. It's almost suffocating with the lack of color, the lack of greenery. Then you have Greenwood Island, lush forest, spirit of rebellion. It's almost like a visual representation of the clashing ideologies that are at play.
Right, and that clash, it's reflected in the characters too, especially Nathanek. He's so conditioned by Empyrean's brutal system that he initially struggles to even comprehend Rima's compassion and free spirit. It's like he's encountering a whole new way of life.
Yeah, his training as an assassin has made him hyper-aware. He's focused on survival. But there's this scene where they're traveling through Emperor's City, and Nathanek notices these subtle signs of an impending sandstorm. These details highlight his skills, but I think they also hint at a deeper understanding of the natural world, something that his military upbringing has tried to suppress.
The way Nathanek's feelings for Rima develop, it really makes you think it's not just a simple case of Stockholm Syndrome. He's a product of this harsh, unforgiving system.
Hmm.
But Rima's resilience, her defiance in the face of danger, it seems to awaken something in him.
It's almost like her spirit challenges his deeply ingrained beliefs about power and control.
Yeah.
He's confronted with her compassion, her willingness to fight for what she believes in, and I think it really forces him to question everything he thought he knew.
And while all of this is happening, we've got Dharmic on this incredible journey to find Rima classic adventure story, facing impossible odds, navigating treacherous terrain, forging alliances with some pretty unexpected characters.
Yeah, and speaking of unexpected, the appearance of Trell Darmick's grandfather really throws another wrench into the story. It's
Yeah.
brilliant how Davis introduces him. Suddenly we have this character with his own history, his own motivations, and it adds another layer of complexity. I found myself wondering, how much did Darmick know about his grandfather and the role he played in this conflict?
Oh, absolutely. And the fact that Trell was once part of Empyrean's military elite but now actively works against them really adds another dimension to the conflict. It makes you question the nature of loyalty, the choices people make when faced with impossible situations.
What's also interesting is how Davis uses these action-packed rescue missions to highlight the differences between Darmick and Nathanek Darmick's approach. It's more impulsive, driven by his love for Rima and his inherent sense of justice. He's willing to take risks to rely on others, to adapt to changing circumstances.
While Nathanek is more calculated, methodical, always assessing the situation, weighing the risks, a master strategist, but also a prisoner of his training, it makes you wonder, even if he wanted to break free from Empyrean's control, is he even aware of the possibility of another way of life?
And that's where the scene with Rima's near execution becomes so pivotal. It's a moment of pure tension, where you're just on the edge of your seat wondering if Darmick will make it in time.
And then that incredible moment when he throws the dagger, stopping the executioner in his tracks. Talk about a hero's entrance.
But even after that, the danger isn't over. We have Barjan and Lennox holding those children hostage, using them as leverage against their own soldiers. It's a chilling reminder of how far they're willing to go to maintain their grip on power.
It's a manipulation tactic that preys on the deepest fears of any parent. They've completely lost sight of what it means to lead, to protect. But then, in stark contrast, we see Rima stepping up. Not because she craves power, but because she feels this deep sense of responsibility for her people. She's thrust into this role, and while she's terrified, she doesn't back down. It makes you think, what would you do in that situation? Could you shoulder the weight of two kingdoms?
And that's what makes her such a compelling character. She's
Oh.
not some perfect, all-knowing ruler. She's learning as she goes, making mistakes,
Yeah.
relying on the support of those around her. And that vulnerability, that willingness to admit her fears, makes her incredibly relatable.
Especially when she confides in Ellie about her anxieties. It's like a moment of honesty, a glimpse into the inner turmoil she's experiencing as she tries to navigate this new reality. It's like she's saying, hey, I'm scared, but I'm going to do this anyway because it's the right thing to do.
And that's where Darmick's unwavering love for her becomes so crucial. It's not just a romantic subplot. It's a source of strength for both of them. Their reunion after her near execution is so emotionally charged. It's a testament to the power of their bond, their shared commitment to fight for a better future.
It's clear that their relationship goes beyond just romance. They're partners in every sense of the word,
Yeah.
supporting each other through these incredibly challenging times. And the fact that they can still find moments of joy, like when they're dancing at the celebration, it's a reminder that even amidst war and political turmoil, there's still room for love and connection.
Those moments of happiness serve as a powerful contrast to the darkness surrounding them. They highlight what they're fighting for. A world where those moments can exist without the constant threat of violence and oppression.
But achieving that world, it's going to take more than just hope, right? There are still so many obstacles ahead. I mean, remember that scene where Darmok and Savanek are scouting ahead and they stumble upon that deserted town? It's eerie, unsettling. It makes you realize that the war is far from over.
That scene is brilliant because it creates this sense of foreboding. We as readers are just as clueless as the characters, trying to piece together what's happened. And then that ambush scene. It's brutal, chaotic, and it really drives home the stakes of this conflict.
It's a turning point in the story, a reminder that the fight for freedom is never easy and that sacrifices will be made. And speaking of sacrifices, the fact that Lennox Darmok's half-brother is leading the king's army wearing Darmok's helmet, it's just so psychologically twisted, the betrayal, the heartbreak that Darmok must be experiencing. It's palpable.
What I find interesting is how Lennox tries to use their familial bond as a manipulation tactic during the fight. He calls them half-brothers,
Yeah.
as if that somehow justifies his actions. But for Darmok, there's no excuse for the pain Lennox has inflicted, the lives he's taken.
It's a reminder that family ties don't always equal loyalty. Sometimes the bonds we forge through shared experiences, through shared values, are stronger than the ones we're born into.
And that final confrontation between them. It's so intense you can practically hear the clash of swords, feel the desperation in their movements. It's more than just a fight for survival. It's a reckoning for years of buried resentment for the choices each of them has made.
And then that heart-wrenching moment when Savanek sacrifices himself, stepping in front of Rima to take that fatal blow, he dies protecting the woman he loves, proving that even in his final act, he's driven by loyalty and a desire to see good triumph.
It's one of the most emotional moments in the book, a reminder that even in the midst of victory, there's a cost, a loss that can never be fully recovered. But it also speaks to the strength of the human spirit, the capacity for selflessness and courage, even in the face of unimaginable danger.
It's like a reminder that even the smallest actions can have a ripple effect, and that sometimes the greatest acts of heroism come at the greatest personal cost. But even in the face of such loss, Rima doesn't crumble. She carries on, knowing that the fight isn't over. And that strength, that resilience, is ultimately what leads her to victory.
It's striking, that victory. It's not just a military triumph. It's a victory for compassion and understanding. That coronation scene. It's not just about Rima assuming power. It's about uniting these two kingdoms that have been at odds for so long.
Right. It's a powerful image of hope for a future where peace and unity are possible. But even with that ending, there's this feeling that her journey is far from over. The challenges of ruling two very different kingdoms. It's not going to be easy.
Absolutely. And it's interesting that even though she's empress now, Rima's still dealing with her own traumas, the loss of her family, the horrors she witnessed in Empyrean. Those scars, they don't just disappear.
Right. It's like she's carrying the weight of two worlds on her shoulders. And she also has to deal with the remnants of Barjan and Lennox reign. Remember that scene where those villagers are brought before her and they're terrified. They've been living under this tyranny for so long, they don't even know how to react to kindness.
It's heartbreaking. Yeah. It really highlights the task ahead of her. It's not just about rebuilding kingdoms. It's about rebuilding trust, rebuilding hope. And that's where Darmok's influence is so crucial. He understands Greenwood Island's culture, their need for freedom and autonomy.
He's like a bridge between those two worlds.
Right. Exactly. And the fact that he's willing to give up his command, to be her protector, it shows how much he believes in her and their shared vision.
And it's not just Darmok. We see other characters stepping up too. Mako, even with his grief. He takes on the responsibility of guiding the transition, and then we have Neko and Ellie providing that unwavering support. It's like a reminder that even the most powerful leaders, they need that strong network.
Absolutely.
And even Nathanek, that stoic assassin, he ends up pledging his loyalty to Rima. It's like he's finally broken free from Empyrean and embraced something more meaningful. His transformation is truly remarkable.
It is a really interesting arc.
Remember, at first he saw her as just another target, another assignment. And as he gets to know her, he sees her strength, her compassion, and it changes everything he thought he knew. Yeah, it's not just about changing his mind. It's that he actively works to protect her. Remember when she's about to be executed? And he tries to shield her from the crowd. It's subtle, but it speaks volumes.
It does. And you know what's fascinating is that Davis doesn't try to romanticize their relationship. It's complex, born out of these really unusual circumstances.
Mm.
But there's mutual respect.
Mm.
There's a shared sense of purpose. It's a dynamic that keeps you guessing.
Right, like are they going to become allies? Is
Yeah.
there something more there? Davis leaves those questions open.
Yeah, and that ambiguity,
Yeah.
it adds another layer to the story. It reflects real life. Relationships aren't always black and white. It kind of mirrors the political landscape that Rima is navigating. There are no easy answers.
Right. It's a world where compromise and understanding are essential. And that's a really powerful takeaway from this deep dive. It's a reminder that even amidst conflict, even when things seem impossible, there's always hope.
And that hope is often found in unexpected places. In a young woman who becomes empress. In an assassin who discovers his humanity. In a community coming together to fight for a shared future. It's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, the human spirit can endure, adapt, and ultimately triumph.
And as for what happens next in Rima's reign, well, that's a story for another deep dive.
You know, it's interesting how Davis portrays that rebuilding process, the messiness of it all. It's not just about, signing treaties and political agreements. It's about the trauma, the deep-seated wounds that linger long after the fighting stops.
Right, and it's not a simple task. But one of the things that stand out to me is Rima's approach. She doesn't try to come in and impose her will on these two very different cultures.
Yeah, she listens, she observes, she tries to understand what her people need, what they fear. It's a very nuanced approach to leadership, realizing that true unity comes from empathy, not force.
Yeah, you see that in the way that she interacts with those villagers who had been living under Barjan and Lenik.
Yeah.
That they're terrified, of course. But Rima shows them compassion and patience, and a genuine desire to understand.
It's a powerful example of how leaders can really foster healing and reconciliation. And it's not about forgetting the past, it's about acknowledging it, addressing the injustices, and then working together to build that better future.
And Dharmic's role in this transition is crucial. He understands Greenwood Island, he understands their need for freedom, and he uses that to bridge the gap between the two kingdoms.
Right. His willingness to give up his command and become her protector, it really speaks volumes about his commitment to their shared vision. It's a good reminder that leadership isn't about holding on to power, it's about empowering others.
And it's not just him either. We see other characters stepping up too. Like Mako takes on this huge responsibility of guiding the transition, even with his grief over Sabanek.
Mm.
And then there's Neko and Ellie. They provide that constant support and counsel. They remind Rima that she's not alone.
It really shows how a community can come together, even after tragedy and upheaval. We all have a role to play in making things better, whether it's big leadership decisions or just everyday acts of kindness.
And then there's Nathanek. His transformation is probably one of the most remarkable in the entire book. He starts as this cold assassin, a product of Empyrean, but through his interactions with Rima, he starts to question everything.
Right, her strength, her compassion, it challenges him. It awakens something in him. It's a testament to that human connection. Even the hardest hearts can soften.
It's a powerful message. It really is. Especially in a world that can feel so divided. It gives you hope that change is possible even in the darkest times.
And as we wrap up this deep dive into war, the most important question to ask ourselves is, what role do we want to play in creating that better future? Are we going to be part of the problem, or are we going to stand up for compassion, justice, understanding?
It's a question that Davis leaves us with. It's a question we should all think about, because Rima's story isn't just a fantasy epic. It reflects our own world and our potential to create a better society.
So remember Rima. Remember her courage, her compassion, her hope, and ask yourself, what can you do to make a difference, even in a small way?
That's the legacy of the True Reign series. It's a legacy we can all carry with us. And until next time, happy reading, happy exploring, and as always, keep diving deep.